No matter what type of business you're running, it's crucial that you have a strong presence on Twitter. Twitter is an incredibly important and powerful social media network that is one of the largest on the net, with approximately 316 million monthly active users and about 1 billion registered users. Like Facebook, Twitter has grown to become a household name and needs no introduction. It has become a part of our everyday lives, even featuring in movies and TV shows as a prominent plot point, and its marketing potential is gigantic. Apart from its size and prominence, Twitter benefits from a number of features that make it perfectly tailored for use as a marketing tool. While some businesses will certainly be better suited to its unique advantages than others, there is no denying that every type of company can benefit from it in some way or another. In the best case scenario, it could help you to improve your customer relations, help to provide a better service, and greatly increase your leads, your turnover, and your profits. In fact, some businesses will find they actually can't cope with the amount of business that comes their way as the result of a new Twitter campaign. If you get retweeted by a prominent user, or if one of your posts starts trending, then you can find yourself inundated by a swarm of new customers. This can be a little like opening Pandora's box, and, at the risk of mixing metaphors, it's not always so easy to put the genie back in the bottle. But having too many customers is definitely a unique complaint, and for most of us, this kind of growth is pretty much the stuff of dreams. So, if you do want to open that Pandora's box, consider this your key to unlocking it. In this video series, we'll go over everything you need to know about Twitter. That means we'll cover the basics, but more importantly, we'll be looking at the best strategies and approaches that you can use to really tap in and harness the power of Twitter. This series is about getting the best possible results in the minimum time and with the minimum effort. If you're currently just treading water on Twitter, this will help you to start seeing massive growth and to have fun doing it, whether you run a small business, a blog, or something else entirely. Are you ready? Let's get started. Just before we jump in and start looking at all the strategies and hacks you can use to get ahead on Twitter, let's take a moment to examine what it is about Twitter that is so perfect for helping you get the word out. At the same time, we'll be looking at what it is about Twitter generally that has helped it to get to the point where it is. The key idea behind Twitter is really that it limits the number of characters you can post or tweet to 140 to be precise. What's interesting about this concept is that, on the face of it, it sounds like a limiting factor. Twitter has restricted its users and made that a feature. But this is a stroke of genius in an age where we're constantly pushed for time and constantly inundated with things to do. And from a marketing standpoint, it's amazing because it takes literally just a few seconds to send out a tweet versus uploading a blog post. That tweet has the potential to be seen by thousands, if not millions of people, but it took you only seconds to write. That's a huge payoff for a very small amount of work, which makes it massively scalable, even for a tiny company. At the same time, the short amount of characters means that people will read the entire tweet without getting bored, and it means you can convey large amounts of information in a very short time. Tweets force you to be witty and to really make sure every word counts, which means a dense amount of information in a short space. Great for someone in a rush. Another stroke of genius is the hashtag. With a hashtag, you can convey the subject matter of your tweet in another convenient way. A post about a beautiful sunset could then end with #beauty or #sunset. Better yet, you can use the hashtag to discuss something that is currently being discussed a lot or something that is very contemporary. For example, if you see something in the news, you can comment on that news using the right hashtag. This means that people who are interested in that subject can search for the keyword and see all the posts in that topic. It's a great way for people to find what you've been sharing. You can also tag other users in your comment with the @ symbol, which is a great way to get their attention or to discuss something that they've said or done. Finally, retweets mean that anyone who enjoys your content can share it with their followers. Like the best social media sites, this allows Twitter to take full advantage of the viral potential of any social network. In theory, a very well thought out tweet can be retweeted multiple times, allowing it to spread exponentially through networks of users. If you share a tweet with 2,000 people and 200 of those reshare and 50 of each of their users reshare, you're starting to reach a gigantic audience. On top of the core features of Twitter, the platform has also grown to present many more opportunities that we digital marketers can make use of. For instance, there are tons of apps, widgets and other platforms that make it very easy to enjoy Twitter in a convenient bite-sized format. Mobile users can even receive tweets from users they're following as notifications, giving you much more direct access to your audience. Likewise, embedding Twitter into the sidebar of your website can also aid growth considerably, as can using one of the countless tools that allows you to automate the publishing of Twitter content. And that's before we've even mentioned the formalized advertising platform. We'll look at how to use all of these features and much more over the course of this video series. For now, the point to keep in mind is simply that Twitter has grown beyond its origins and is now an incredibly flexible tool. In fact, it is perhaps the most flexible social network, thanks to its minimalistic nature. Some people watching this video will no doubt be looking to get involved with Twitter for the very first time, which is great. The vast majority of you, though, will already have a Twitter account and will be tweeting away. The problem you may be facing is that you're not gaining the traction you want, and perhaps it feels like you're just treading water. This is the status quo for a lot of small businesses, and even for bloggers who understand the basics of Twitter, but don't understand what it really takes to have their content explode on the platform. See if this sounds familiar. You created an account between 1 to 5 years ago. You started tweeting regularly at first, but you didn't really know what to tweet. Most of your tweets were things like, "Looking for great legal advice? Come check our site." You managed to gain 25 followers in your first year. It's year 4 now and you have 27 followers. After a while you gave up and went silent on Twitter. Every now and then you give it another try, but quickly get disheartened. You don't understand what the hugely successful Twitter accounts are doing differently. If this does sound like you, then don't be too disheartened. The scenario I just described is typical of around 90% of businesses on Twitter. The problem is, Twitter's success is not a matter of build it and they will come. To be successful on Twitter, you need to understand the psychology behind why people join in the first place. What's more, you need to have an actual strategy that's going to make your content appealing and shareable. Even then, success is unlikely to come overnight, although a few growth hacking techniques, and we'll look at those later, can help with this. But if you set things up correctly, you'll find that you can reliably gain followers on Twitter over time, and this growth increases in speed gradually and exponentially as you gather more momentum. On Twitter, success begets success. Now get ready for the first sweeping statement and somewhat controversial idea in this video series. You won't be successful on Twitter without being successful elsewhere. Yes, this is a big claim, and there are some exceptions to this rule. Some Twitter users are so witty and so inventive that they manage to gain big followings on Twitter without any other form of digital marketing. But in most cases, well, we follow someone on Twitter because we're already interested in them, or at least in the topic they're covering. A Twitter campaign is much more likely to be successful when it's built synergistically with the right Facebook page, the right blog, and the right branding. To this end, you should think of your Twitter account primarily as a way for your fans and visitors to stay up to date with your business and with your industry, and as a way for them to subscribe to your content when they decide they want to see more of you. And remember too, people don't tend to become fans of a brand after a single interaction. They need to have multiple interactions with your brand before they'll start to get a full understanding of your mission statement and see what you represent. What's more, they need to see you multiple times before they'll remember you properly and thus start seeking out your content actively. This is why many digital marketers swear by the maxim that you should aim to, quote, be everywhere. Now this means having accounts on all the big platforms and having a strong, consistent branding all across them. So how do you accomplish this? Well, perhaps these tips will help. First of all, you want to create a strong logo that you're proud of. Use this as the heading on your website and as your cover image on social media accounts. You should choose a name that's the same as your company name or at least echoes it, and again use this on all of your social media. You should sign up to as many social media accounts as you can, and I'm talking things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, Tumblr, Vine, Google+, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and any others that you can think of. Link all of your social media accounts, include a button on your home page that makes it easier for people to find your Twitter feed and to sign up to it. You should also have a strong focus and mission statement. Make sure that the topics you write about will always be of interest to the core audience that you're targeting. So let's say that you have a website on fitness that has a unique slant towards the outdoor lifestyle. Perhaps you sell training shoes and other equipment as your main form of monetization, and maybe you have a blog where you write about things like trail running and different exercise regimes. The idea then is that people will find your website through Google and perhaps other means like social media, and when they land on your page they should immediately see what you're all about from your strong logo and design language. This should then indicate to them whether they might be interested in what you're writing. Hopefully they'll read your content and enjoy it, and this will leave a good impression on them. And then they'll leave. Now, if you haven't thought about your branding and you haven't got a Twitter account set up, that might be the last of it. But if you've done things right, eventually they'll discover your content again somehow. Maybe they'll land on your website again, or perhaps they'll just see one of your tweets on Twitter. Either way, they might now decide that what you're discussing is interesting enough to read on a regular basis, and that they should at least click the Follow Us on Twitter button on your website, or perhaps follow you directly through Twitter if that's where they've encountered you. What's more, when they visit your Twitter account, they should see that you have the same professional looking logo, the same great looking cover image, and the same cool username. All this will help to cement the idea that you're part of a professional outfit and that you're an authority in your niche. Of course, it might take many more interactions than just the two before they get to this point. Likewise, it might not be through Twitter that they find you the second time, or that they decide to follow you. It could just as easily be through Facebook or Google+. The point, though, is that you need to keep hitting them with your strong branding and great quality across multiple platforms to get them to consider following you. Twitter should be one part of a much broader marketing campaign, and it should start with your logo and your company name. In the next video, we'll examine some ways that you can create synergy between Twitter and other social media. In this video, I'll give you some tips that will help you reach the point where your social media accounts and your blog itself are combined. Some of these will immediately take a mediocre and poorly functioning Twitter account and turn it into something that is gradually able to gain momentum. So after you've followed through on the advice from the previous video and established a strong brand across all platforms, the next thing to get to work on is setting up these relationships. This is crucial stuff, not to be skipped. The first thing to do is to make sure your site has a Follow Us on Twitter button. Even if you're only getting a small amount of traffic to your website, you might be making a big impression on some of those visitors. Adding a button that makes it easy for people to follow you on Twitter or that links to your Twitter profile will give those people an easy and familiar way to stay updated and to get more of your content. A lot of websites will forego this. Too often, bloggers and business owners recognize the importance of letting their visitors share the content they find and enjoy, but they don't give an easy way to follow them. Add this function and make it prominent, and suddenly you have a way to stay in touch with your occasional visitors and to bring them back more often. This way, even if you were to ignore your Twitter, it would still grow slowly over time. Better yet is to add a Twitter feed to your website. Assuming your website is powered by WordPress, you can integrate this feature very simply by installing a widget plugin and arranging it to appear in your sidebar. The best widget for this task, in my opinion, is WP Twitter Feeds, which you can install from within the WordPress dashboard. If you're unsure about how to do this, then ask your web designers, but note that this is a 2-minute job and should be charged accordingly. Once you have a Twitter feed, you'll not only have made it easy for people to follow you if they want to, but you'll also have given them a little taster of the kind of content they can expect from you if they do follow. This also has the nice added bonus of keeping your website looking active by filling it with new content. We briefly mentioned social sharing buttons as something most people should already know that they should do. Now, just to reiterate, you should do this. Social sharing buttons give your visitors an easy way to share the content they enjoy on your website, even if they aren't following you. This means that their entire audience will get to see that content and might be introduced to your brand for the first time. If you have a WordPress site, the best plugin I know of for this purpose is Shareaholic, which again you can install from within the WordPress dashboard. It not only lets your visitors follow you on Twitter, but on other social media sites like Facebook and Google+ as well. You should link all of your different social media accounts, but one of the most important ones to look at is Instagram. Why? Because Instagram and Twitter work very similarly and are perfectly designed to go together. Briefly, Instagram is a social media channel where you can share photos with light effects and filters added. It's got lots of photos of sunsets, selfies of people working out, and shots of people's legs on sun loungers. But Instagram can also be very useful for marketers. For starters, it's actually larger than Twitter in many ways. At the same time, it makes similar use of hashtags, but it's actually more popular for them as people will enjoy looking at photos on particular themes. If you upload a photo of your hotel on holiday, for instance, then you might very likely want to see photos other people have recently taken of that same hotel, people who are likely staying there with you at that very moment. The great thing is that when you upload to Instagram, you can easily select to tweet to Twitter as well, and this will include the very same comment and hashtag while even showing a link to the image you posted. This way you can add a more visual element to your Twitter tweets, and people can feel as though they're getting an insight into your daily life or into the way you run your business. You should also link your accounts and ensure that if you post to one, that message will appear on all of your different social networks. So, for example, if you update your Facebook page status, then ideally that should appear on Twitter. Likewise, if you upload a new video, then you should have this appear on your Twitter account too. You can even set up WordPress to share new posts on Twitter. This is a great way to save time while providing compelling content to your Twitter followers. This feature is built right into WordPress, which makes the whole thing very easy. We're going to get a bit more advanced with this auto-posting in coming videos, but at this point the take-home message is that content you post in one place should automatically be shared across all your accounts where appropriate. Here's one more way to get people to sign up to your Twitter that often gets overlooked. Just ask them to. If you place a Twitter button in the corner of your website and you find that people still aren't signing up, then it could be one of two things. Either no one knows it's there, or you're not providing enough incentive for people to want to sign up. So instead of just leaving it to chance, why not say in the occasional blog post something like, "To stay up to date with all our latest content and special offers, please consider signing up to our Twitter." Something like this might be just enough to draw attention to your Twitter and get people interested. This works even better in video, so if you occasionally vlog, you should also make sure that you ask people to sign up at the end of each video. With everything we've covered in the last two videos, you should now have a good idea of how to set up your Twitter account for the best chance of organic growth and for synergy across your social media accounts and digital marketing efforts. Still though, all the synergy in the world won't make up for a lack of content. Ultimately, you need to ensure you are constantly filling up your Twitter account with new information that will make people want to sign up and keep following you. When we discussed at the start of this series what most companies were doing wrong and where they found themselves, we found that they hadn't done anything to help users find their accounts or to sign up. But the other problem was that they didn't know what they were meant to be posting. Here are some examples of the kind of content you might find for an EPOS company posting. Now, EPOS is electronic point of sale, effectively a checkout system for a shop or store. Let's look at this first one. Do you want to serve your customers faster? Try our hashtag EPOS, hashtag point of sale, hashtag checkout. Or this one. Are you ready for the holiday season? Make sure your hashtag EPOS, hashtag software can handle your increased turnover. Or, we're offering a 10% discount to new clients for this month only. Sign up now, and it gives the URL. Or what about this one? Our EPOS software is faster and more reliable than the nearest competition. Hashtag turnover, hashtag security. You get the point. So what's wrong with this exactly? Well, it will be quicker to ask what's right with it. Ask yourself this. Would you follow that kind of Twitter account? What would be the point? If you were an existing customer, then seeing adverts for something you were already using wouldn't exactly offer much value. If you weren't an existing customer, well, it's likely you'd just be frustrated by the constant nagging. So the question you need to ask yourself is, what would your customers want to read? Well, the first question to ask is, who are your customers? The answer in case of an EPOS company would be business owners. This is a fantastic niche. Business owners have plenty in common with one another and a very clear and obvious area of interest. In short, there's lots of potential for content that is going to be highly intriguing to this audience. Posts on customer service, on new business technologies, on social media marketing, on pricing, and a whole lot more. You can provide some real value here with business tips and advice, and your audience will eat it up. If you run a fitness blog, then you should provide fitness tips, workout advice, diet ideas, and so on. If you run a blog on the martial arts, then discuss movies and your favorite martial arts films. Think of each tweet as a mini product and try to ensure that the reader benefits from it in some way, whether that's by being entertained or by learning something. For businesses, industry news can also prove very popular, especially if it facilitates teamwork between brands, which we'll look at shortly. Another approach to take is a little less on the nose. Instead of directly discussing your niche industry or service, you can talk about the lifestyle of people involved with your topic instead. In other words, you try to sell the idea that you're part of a community and you post on subjects that might inspire or that your audience can relate to. This would work well for our EPOS company. It's likely they're a small team and they probably work with a lot of other businesses that are also just starting out. This then puts them in the perfect position to tweet about their business. Maybe to show some behind-the-scenes photos of a new store that's setting up somewhere, or maybe to upload pictures of the team to Instagram at Christmas time wearing Christmas hats. This is inspiring and motivating for other young companies, and it subtly shows off what that EPOS service can offer without ramming it down everyone's throat. It can work even better for some commercial businesses selling useful things. Going back to the outdoors fitness companies selling those running shoes, they can easily promote the outdoor lifestyle with Instagram pictures of people running on the beach or of hiking boots covered in snow. They could also tweet motivational sayings like, "Success is the last person to stop running." Likewise, covering something that everyone can relate to might mean something along the lines of, "One of the downsides of running, far too many clothes to wash." This is a powerful strategy because people will now feel like they're part of something by following you on Twitter. Instead of a company, you're now a movement and an ideal, and this is where social media can become truly powerful. There's another strategy that you can also employ with your tweets that will often prove popular, and that's to provide some kind of personal insight into your business or life. This works especially well for celebrities and for big bloggers. If you follow a well-known blogger, then you might find that you want to get some insights into their lives. What do they do in their spare time? What's their view on whatever? What do they eat for dinner? This sort of thing sounds trivial and boring, but if your fans really respect your content, you may be surprised at how interested they are in these seemingly mundane aspects of your life. It adds a new dimension to your content. It helps them to get to know you, and it builds trust and familiarity. So if you're a fitness blogger, don't be afraid to tweet a picture of what you're having for dinner. If you're a business owner, don't be afraid to post a picture of your busy commute one morning. Of course, it's important to gauge this correctly, and some of you will find it much easier and more suitable to employ this technique than others. If you're part of a multinational corporation, then you may find it's not appropriate to be too personal. If you run a small business, though, a few personal or behind-the-scene posts can help you to get to know you. But if you're a blogger in the same vein as Pat Flynn or Tim Ferriss, then feel free to be as personal and opinionated as you like, without offending anyone, of course. Another way to ensure that your Twitter is constantly full of interesting, relevant and quality information is to react to what's in the news and what's trending. Some people have described Twitter as being the pulse of the planet. What they mean by this is that the short-form content on Twitter and the large number of users makes it a great place for qualitative data. In other words, there are lots of words being posted in a format that's easy to interpret, and that way you can almost get the mood of the internet as a whole. Likewise, you can find out what's on the mind of the population by looking at what's trending, or which hashtags are currently being used most often. In all likelihood, if something big has just happened in the news, say a big celebrity were to have died, then hashtags related to that topic will be among the most widely used at that time. Eventually, one particular hashtag will rise to prominence and will come to represent that topic on Twitter. So, if an imaginary celebrity called Johnny Big Star were to die, then our popular hashtag might be hashtag RIP Johnny Big Star, or hashtag JB, etc. As someone who's trying to build prominence on Twitter, it's always a good idea to comment on these sorts of topics where possible. This is because you can be sure that lots of people will be looking for those hashtags and will be retweeting that content. What's more, once you have established your brand on Twitter, people should be interested to see your take on the matter. Just make sure you are careful not to be too divisive or offensive, unless this is your strategy, of course, and make sure that you only comment when you have something worthwhile to contribute. Note as well that if you comment on something that's too big, you can easily get lost in a sea of other comments. Sometimes it's picking up on the somewhat big news that will actually get you more coverage. Better yet, picking up on a story that's big in your industry can be a great way to stand out and get noticed. This way, the people who see your posts will be more targeted, meaning they are people who are potential clients and customers and who fall within your target demographic. Make sure that you keep one ear to the ground and do everything you can to stay constantly up to date with the latest developments. This might mean reading other blogs or industry newsletters. It might even mean following other Twitter users in your niche. Notice how useful it is when companies share news. And we'll continue this video in part 2. Welcome to part 2. If you run a business with a lot to do, then there's only so much unique content you can create in a day, and there's probably only so many witty things that you can think of to say that your audience will be likely to enjoy. The good news, though, is that a fair amount of your content can be derivative or outright stolen. A lot of business is about connecting a supplier with a consumer. If you own a supermarket, for example, then it will be your job to buy groceries at a low wholesale price and then sell them on at a higher retail price to your customers. You aren't creating anything new, you're just acting as the middleman and getting paid for it. Running a Twitter account is often very similar to this, and in many ways your job is now to scour the web for useful and interesting content, for news and stories, and then to share that with your audience. It might feel a bit odd that you're essentially profiting from somebody else's hard work, but think of it instead as finding an audience for something that someone else has created, while at the same time curating content for a market that you know will love it. That's a great service you're providing. And it just so happens that this process is also a great way for you to keep your Twitter account active with great new content, and it involves barely any work on your part. So make sure that you're continuously reading up on topics relating to your business. This means you should be reading other blogs, following other Twitter users, and reading magazines. Now when you find a news item that you think your audience will genuinely enjoy, you should share it with them. Make sure you don't keep sharing from the same place, and try to find things they probably wouldn't have been able to find on their own. If your blog is about fitness, then perhaps you might share the results of a new study looking at a surprising new training method. If you run a B2B business, then perhaps you might share the results of a recent survey on types of business. Note, though, that when you do share new content, you should always add your own comment on the matter if possible. This way, you personalize that link, and if it gets shared even more, then people will be introduced to your brand and to your ethos, rather than simply ignoring who shared it altogether. So, if you found a study on a new muscle-building supplement, your comment might be, "This could certainly help me to lose my spare tire if it works on humans." And you have the URL, and hashtag supplements, hashtag fitness, hashtag fat burning. Or, let's see how many con artists jump on this dubious study. And again the URL, hashtag snake oil, hashtag research, hashtag fitness industry. Either way, you're now not only sharing something that your audience will be interested in, but you're also doing it in a way that introduces people to your point of view and beliefs. Do note, though, that the posts I just mentioned aren't terribly clickable. If you want more people to take notice of your link and follow it, then you may need to sell the value proposition a little. For example, "It's early days, but the results of this study on mitochondrial function could completely change my pre-workout stack." The URL, and then hashtag excited, hashtag mitochondria, hashtag fat burning. This will grab more attention because it provides a little more information. We know that it's about mitochondrial function, and because it shows the potential implications and how they might be relevant to your audience. Doing this is important because it will make your feed look more interesting, and it will increase engagement with your content so that more people actually read it and come away with a positive experience. Don't go overboard with hyperbole, though. If people think you're all hype and no substance, they'll quickly stop caring what you have to say. Just a note, but when you share a link on Twitter, you should shorten it, giving you more space to add your thoughts. You can use the website Bitly to do this for you, and you'll find out more about it at bitly.com. Obviously, the very easiest way to share content on Twitter, though, is just to hit retweet. Again, you can do this while adding your own commentary, and it's a great way to encourage more discussion. There is one type of content that the average business gets right, though, and that's to talk about deals. This is something that surveys suggest followers do like to hear because, of course, it provides them with value in the money that they can save. This is also a great way to reward your visitors for following you and to make them feel special. If you have a product or service, then make sure you occasionally offer promotions to your Twitter followers, and this is also a good way to get retweets if your followers know others who might benefit from what you sell. Giveaways are even better. If you can give away a free ebook, a free drink, or something else for nothing, then it's bound to grab some attention and will win some goodwill. We'll be coming back to this in a subsequent video. All this advice should help you to start adding real value to your Twitter account, which will make a massive difference to the way you're seen by your followers and ultimately to how many people choose to start following you. This is far preferable to talking entirely about your products and services without actually offering anything in return. Unfortunately, though, some businesses are going to be resistant to this idea. This is a problem that many social media marketing agencies will face. They approach a company like our imaginary EPOS business and present them with a strategy. The problem is, the EPOS company thinks it's unprofessional to talk about business as a whole or subjects they feel are off topic. They don't want to showcase other companies by retweeting or sharing links, and they certainly don't want to be seen as having an opinion. Don't be that company. Playing it safe is actually the surest way to appear out of touch, uninteresting, and uninspired. It might feel a little risky at first to appear conversational or to discuss a wider range of topics, but that's precisely what will make you interesting. What's key is simply that your business has a clear identity and mission statement. As long as you adhere to that at all times, being a bit more adventurous with your content will pay off. If you do choose to use an agency for your digital and social media marketing, make sure they're thinking along these lines. By now, you should have a fairly good understanding of what Twitter is and how to achieve success with it. You know what Twitter's strengths are, you know how to set up an account, and you know how to make this part of a larger brand and synergistic digital marketing strategy. Also, you have created lots of inroads to your brand and ensured there are plenty of ways for people to find you. On top of that, you're now filling your account with great content that will attract more followers, keep existing followers interested, and encourage lots of retweets and shares. This alone is enough to ensure that you have a steady momentum and that your blog will grow over time. Unfortunately, though, it's still going to be a slow process if that's all you're doing, and it still involves a lot of work. That's why these next two videos are so important. This video is about working smart with Twitter instead of working hard. It's about streamlining your Twitter workflow, and it's about learning how to get more done in less time. Better yet, the next video is about finding ways to hack your growth and to jump straight to the top, leapfrogging your competition along the way. For those who have read The 4-Hour Workweek, this approach should be fairly familiar. This is about applying that 80-20 rule to your Twitter marketing efforts and putting more time into the aspects that get the real results. At the start of this series, we mentioned how Twitter had grown and now came with a host of tools and other features that you could benefit from, making it even more powerful. The following are just some tools that you can start using to make succeeding on Twitter that much easier and that much less work. First of all, there's Buffer. Buffer is a very simple tool that Twitter fans love. The idea is that you can buffer your tweets, essentially by queuing them so that they post automatically at set times. The thing to recognize here is that having a Twitter account that is completely quiet and empty is one of the worst mistakes that you can make. If your Twitter account has been abandoned and you haven't posted anything in the last 2 months, this will lead people to wonder whether you might have gone out of business. In the best case scenario, it will look as though you don't have the resources or the know-how to use Twitter, or as though you don't understand its importance. In short, it'll make you look unprofessional and thereby do more damage than having no Twitter account at all. Buffer gets around this problem by guaranteeing a steady flow of content, while also reducing the amount of time that you spend creating it. That's because you can set aside a few hours and write, say, 1,000 generic Twitter posts, and then let them be published every day for the next 1,000 days. No matter what happens, your Twitter will never be empty. And you can sign up at buffer.com. Then there's Hootsuite. And Hootsuite is not one social media tool, but really several built into one very convenient platform. And it has a lot of powerful features. For starters, Hootsuite could do everything that Buffer can. Buffer is better suited to people who don't want to deal with all the complicated functions available through Hootsuite. But at the same time, Hootsuite does let you manage multiple accounts. It lets you see various different social media streams in one place, and it lets more than one person log in, which can be very useful for teams who share their media duties. It makes cross-posting useful, and it even emails you with free reports. If you're serious about your social media and you've been around long enough to have a basic understanding of how it all works, then you should find that Hootsuite helps to streamline the whole process for you. This is a paid-for service, but at the time that I'm making this video, there is a 30-day free trial offer, and you can find out more at hootsuite.com. Another tool is IFTTT. Enough good things cannot be said about this incredible tool. IFTTT stands for If This Then That, a familiar phrase to anyone with a little experience in programming. What this does is to list all your different social media accounts and all your online apps together by creating recipes. Recipes are comprised of some kind of trigger event and an action that this causes. So for example, you can set up a recipe so that every time you post a comment to Facebook, it's also posted to Twitter. But it gets far more advanced than that. You can set up IFTTT to save all your tweets to a spreadsheet on Google Drive. You could also get IFTTT to share Instagram photos with a certain tag to Twitter, so that only certain types of content get shared. You can even do things like controlling the temperature of your house via Nest by sending emails. This is an incredibly powerful tool and has almost unlimited uses. Think creatively and you should find it has plenty of potential for your Twitter marketing campaign. How about setting up IFTTT so that topics that get upvoted enough in a certain subreddit get shared to your Twitter? That way you'll have completely automated and highly relevant content for your Twitter account. And you can sign up at ifttt.com. Finally, there's BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo is a tool that allows you to quickly find content in a specific niche that's performing well on social media. Once you're using the tool, you'll be able to easily browse through various different posts that are getting a lot of attention. From there, you can share them to your own social media accounts. This is useful because it saves time and provides a quick and simple way for you to find more content. What's even better, though, is that you know this content is performing well and getting lots of shares, so it's likely to get you lots of shares too. Even if you don't share the actual content on BuzzSumo, you can always use it just to see what kinds of things are performing well. This way, you can get ideas for your own type of content and get a quick overview of how your niche or industry is performing. And you can find out more here at buzzsumo.com. A word of warning though. don't overdo the automation. If you use the right combination of tools and settings, then you should find that you can automate a great deal of your Twitter marketing. Even if you don't write regular posts anymore, your Twitter will now be populated with content on a recurring basis using Buffer, every time you post a new blog, every time you post a new YouTube video or like a YouTube video, every time something good comes up on Reddit, every time you post to Facebook, whenever you post to Instagram. Some marketers will even take this one step further and will have their Twitter accounts respond to comments automatically using bots. Now that's a lot of auto-generated content and a lot of time saved, and generally a great way to maximize your ROI for the time that you're putting in. But don't get too reliant on these methods for filling your needs. If you do this, you can end up with a social media channel that's entirely soulless and doesn't add any real value. Gone will be the personal insights, the tailored content to your market, or the lifestyle promotion that we discussed earlier. The same wording will be used every time for certain actions too. For example, I liked a video on YouTube, and then you have the URL. What's worse, you might even end up with duplicates of the same content, or with content that doesn't quite make any sense. If you use Buffer too much, you'll end up with content that doesn't express your mood, that doesn't reflect what's in the news, and is just frankly generic. It'll lack the spontaneity or relevance of content that you upload yourself. With Buffer, the posts come at the same time every day as well, and this alone can be enough to prevent those posts from seeming natural and organic. People will be able to tell you if your Twitter posts have no personality, so don't let this happen, and use these auto-generation techniques sparingly. This is only for keeping your social media channels active. The life and soul will come from you actually writing new content and reacting to what's going on in your life. There is a way you can create a compromise situation and streamline the process of uploading content and avoiding periods of no new posts, but while still writing it yourself. The simple trick is to download some apps for your various social media accounts such as Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and the official ones usually work best. Now it's really easy for you to comment on something that's happening or is on your mind, and it should only take a couple of minutes to do this whenever the inspiration strikes. And to prevent yourself from forgetting to do this, you can also set up some times of the day and some rules as to when and how you're going to post. For example, how about making the decision to post new content every time you go to the kitchen to make a cup of tea? You could even make this easier by having a separate tablet or smartphone just for posting to those accounts. Try taking an old Android tablet and keeping it in your kitchen with the Twitter app installed, or even leaving it on your assistant if you're not too worried about hygiene. While it's not a separate app or tool, Twitter Analytics is a very powerful force multiplier that belongs in your strategy and which can greatly enhance your effectiveness. To find Twitter Analytics, simply go to analytics.twitter.com/about. From here, you'll be able to log in and find your account statistics, and these will show you how you've been performing over the past month. These include tweets, how many tweets you've posted in that month. Tweet impressions, how many times your tweets have been shown. Profile visits, how many people have visited your profile. If this is much higher than your new followers, you need to ask why your profile isn't converting. Mentions, how many people have mentioned your brand. More about this later. Top tweet, which of your tweets got seen the most times? Top media tweet, which of your links got seen the most times? Top follower, which of your followers has the most followers and best engagements? Keep this in mind when we get to the section on influencer marketing later on. Top mention, which mention received the most attention and engagement? Use all this information to ascertain which parts of your campaign are working and which need more work. As a result, you can hone your process to ensure that you're maximizing your potential impact. You might think we've covered an awful lot of what makes Twitter tick at this point, but you're still missing out on something pretty important: the social aspect. So far, we've only discussed creating content and putting things out there. But of course, Twitter isn't just about output. It's about input too. This is a communication tool and a social network. In other words, you need to think about responding to comments as much as you think about creating posts from scratch. Better yet, you need to think about how you can encourage engagement and interaction. This will make a big difference to the way people see your brand, and it will greatly improve your chances of getting shared and retweeted. What's more, by leveraging this social engagement correctly, you can see sudden growth. This is where the growth hacking aspect comes in, so why don't we start with that? If you're new to Twitter and you post a tweet to your audience, then you may get it seen by, say, 100 people, maybe 1,000. And this is pretty good. If your post gets retweeted by one of those 1,000 people and they are an average user, then it may get seen by 100 to 300 more people on top of your original 1,000. This is also pretty good. Better yet, if someone enjoys that tweet, they might start following you. Thus, you've got a new follower. But imagine if your post were retweeted by someone like Bill Gates. Suddenly, that message would be seen by millions of users. He currently has 24.6 million followers, thousands of which would probably retweet it to their thousands of followers. Some of Bill Gates' own followers would probably have millions of followers in their own right, so this effect would be repeated potentially many times over. You would get hundreds of thousands of new followers this way and would increase your influence drastically overnight. That's a growth hack because you've gone to 1 million followers overnight instead of taking it the usual several years. This particular growth hack is using a technique called influencer marketing, where you're relying on the influence of someone already established on Twitter to give you that boost and that head start. Now, influencer marketing will always involve an element of luck, and you can never guarantee that it's going to work. Still though, it's well worth a try, and by targeting influence with content tailored for their appreciation, and even sometimes mentioning them in comments, you can potentially see amazing results. Oh, and a tip: don't go after Bill Gates right away. Instead, aim to start with smaller influencers, such as prominent members of your niche or your industry. Look for someone with about 1,000 followers and then someone with 100,000 followers and build your way up to the top. You can also get great success from mentioning other businesses and having them mention you. That way you can quickly share your followers with one another. This can even work with direct competitors, but you're more likely to be successful with business partners and companies that provide supplementary services to your own. If you build websites, then looking for an SEO company and promoting each other is a good strategy. Again though, aim for people who are on a similar level to you to begin with. Here's a quick tip for any kind of influencer marketing. Real-world strategies always work best. Too often, people find the email address or the Twitter account of an influencer and think, great, a connection. In reality, though, that person is not a connection. A connection is someone who actually feels that they know you, at least a little, and who is willing to help you out. You can accomplish this in 2 minutes if you meet someone in person, whereas it takes a lot longer to get to that level via emails. This is why networking events and trade shows are so valuable. Find the influencers, introduce yourself, and have a human chat. Do not try to get anything from them. Then, a few weeks later, post something related to what you spoke about, or perhaps that you think they'll find interesting, and then tag them. Don't force the issue, but your chances of a retweet just went up significantly. You can also use your real-world networking skills to get regular followers on board. If you run a retail store and someone visits, you can tweet a photo of them with you, or you can message them to say thanks. People love this as it feels a little like being famous, and if you're lucky they may retweet that message to their followers. This is particularly useful for local businesses. If they're a local customer, then chances are their connections also live locally. In the next video, I'll talk about some more ways you can engage with your audience. In addition to the advice I gave you in the last video, you should also be thinking of ways that you can increase engagement with your broader audience. How do you get people to not just glance over your posts, but to actually read them, to comment on them, and to view you as almost a contact they can trust rather than a faceless brand? Right away, following the advice we've covered, such as being more personal and open in your posts, can help a great deal. At the same time, though, you can use some of the following strategies. A very underutilized strategy on Twitter is simply to follow people. Because if you follow someone, you gain their attention, especially if they don't have a ton of followers. Suddenly they feel excited that someone, even a brand, is interested in what they have to say, and they check out your page. More often than not, they'll follow you back. The same goes for retweeting. Retweet the things that people have to say, and they'll feel obligated to you. Suddenly, they'll be much more likely to retweet whatever you have to say, in part simply because they feel somewhat obliged to return the favor. Obligation and reciprocity is a very powerful emotion in business. Again, this works best if you don't apply it to the huge players who won't even notice you. Do it to people who are a little lower down the pecking order than you, and try to benefit them in doing so. It's no skin off your teeth as long as their post is relevant to your audience, and it will still gain you followers when they return the favor. You can then scale this up as you climb the ladder and gain more and more followers. Want people to comment and engage you in conversation? Then simply invite them to. Adding a "what do you think" or "opinions please" to the end of a message invites discussion and is much more likely to result in proper engagement. Also, think about what you're posting about. Does it naturally lead itself to discussion? And of course, to make your account seem active and engaging, you should also make sure you answer everyone whenever possible. If you've ever read Kevin Kelly's blog post 1000 True Fans, then you'll know what an impact even a single fan can make. Don't take your followers for granted. They're worth the investment of your time. If you haven't read the post, you can do so at kk.org/the-technium/1000-true-fans. Finally, if you want to draw in a lot of new followers quickly, another powerful strategy is to run some kind of event. This might mean a competition or a giveaway, or it might mean a live Q&A. Either way, something like this can get people talking, it can generate buzz, and it can be exciting for the followers you already have. Think about things you can do that will be fun and different, and that will stand out. How about challenging your visitors with some kind of brain teaser? Or maybe volunteering to retweet the best comment about your new product? How about letting your users name your new comment? It's something to consider. We mentioned at the start of this video series that Twitter was perhaps one of the most flexible tools for social media marketing. If you just do everything we've covered so far, then you'll have a powerful social media account that will grow rapidly, especially if you combine the strategy with great quality content and some creative ideas. But to get the very most out of Twitter, you should also consider some of its other features. For instance, Twitter advertising and reputation management. Twitter is a powerful tool for public relations because it gives you a direct means of communication with your audience. This in turn means that you can control the way your brand is seen, and it even allows you to respond to comments, criticisms, and bad reviews. One aspect of this is the power of reputation management. Reputation management is a service provided by many online agencies that changes the way your brand is seen by people researching it online for the first time. This involves the process of responding to reviews and encouraging positive feedback, but it can also mean responding to comments and discussions about your brand. This aspect can be handled very easily on Twitter. To find mentions of your brand on Twitter, you can simply search for it using Twitter's built-in search tool. Hootsuite can do this even better, as can using Twitter's advanced search option. Either way, you can now see when someone is talking about you on Twitter, and this gives you the opportunity to respond. Make sure that you write something positive and not defensive or retaliatory, even if it's responding to something negative. Also, don't ignore the positive comments you receive. Instead, consider favoriting the comment, which might get you a new follower, or respond to them and thank them for the mention. You can do the same thing by responding to reviews and putting forward your own point of view. Do be careful not to unnecessarily attract more attention to bad press, though. It's a fine line to walk. In fact, there are lots of ways that Twitter can have the opposite effect of the one you want when it comes to your reputation management and public relations. There are countless examples of celebrities and even businessmen and women saying things on Twitter and other social media channels that make them look out of touch, petty, or stupid. Don't let this happen to you. Follow these 5 points. 1. Don't be negative about other brands and don't pick fights. 2. If you are the face of a professional brand, try not to be opinionated on divisive topics. 3. Stay away from politics and religion unless you feel very strongly. This is a risk you may still decide to take. 4. Research your facts and make sure that you know what you're talking about. 5. Avoid sweeping statements. If you're struggling to get momentum naturally on Twitter, then you can always pay for a little bit of a jump start. Twitter advertising is called promoted tweets, and this means you'll be able to pay to get your tweet seen by a wider audience. Your tweet will then be seen by more people, though the audience will still be specifically targeted to ensure they're relevant to your niche. You can schedule the tweet, in a similar manner to Buffer, so that it will appear at a specific time of day and will not be shown to your followers unless you want it to be. Of course, you can use Twitter advertising to directly sell a product, but very often it can be used simply to get more people to start following you. This is a great way to get more people to become aware of your brand, and while ROI might be slow in coming, it can be an effective way to attract people you might otherwise not be able to reach. For more advanced marketing, though, Facebook ads are far more flexible and powerful, as is Google AdWords. As your social media accounts and blogs should be working synergistically, you might do better to advertise in these places rather than directly on Twitter itself. In the final video of this series, I'll help you put together a Twitter strategy you can start to implement right away. So there you have it, a complete guide to how you should start getting the very most out of Twitter. Hopefully this has fueled you with some inspiration and ideas to help get you started, and you should be raring to go. In case you're a little overwhelmed though, here's an outline for a strategy you can begin employing right away. First of all, create a strong logo and brand. Incorporate this across countless social media sites as well as on your main blog. Secondly, create connections between your accounts so that some content will be auto-generated. Add some content to Buffer to ensure your Twitter never looks dead. Make it easy for yourself to post images and comments with the right apps. Stop posting adverts for your product or service. Start posting about the niche, the lifestyle or the industry that you deal with. Make sure your content inspires, helps and entertains. Provide value. Comment on news and important events. Use the right hashtags to help your content get found. Engage with your audience. Encourage them to join in with conversations. Add new users and retweet their best content. Use ad swaps and influencer marketing to hack your growth and start getting higher faster. Gradually interact with users that have higher and higher numbers of followers. Utilize the power of your real-world connections and work with business partners to access their followers. Launch events and competitions to generate buzz and get people excited. Look for mentions of your brand and respond to them. Consider promoted tweets for a boost. The key is to make sure you're always providing value. Combine this with strong branding and lots of opportunities for people to find your content, and you won't go far wrong. Good luck and happy tweeting!